industry, isn't it?
Love it. Love it. Great industry. 5, 4. Yeah, we're just talking away. Welcome to another episode of By the Numbers, the quintessential Counter-Strike podcast with me, Richard Lewis, him, Duncan Shield.
Now we cut out the stuff that's good before. We don't even put it in the show, Rich.
Yeah, we don't even put it in the show. The best conversation literally happens before we just talk absolute bollocks on the show. And I'm gonna start that trend. I'm gonna keep that trend going. Thought it was funny. I went on a diatribe in the last episode about how, like, if idiots don't like the content, the only feasible solution is don't watch. Don't think it's a committee. You're not on the board of directors. You have zero input. Even if you're a patron, you have zero input. That's not what you're paying the patronage for. No, it's not a fact. Just to calculate.
It doesn't say on any of the awards.
Right? Cards on the table. Yeah, you have zero input. If you put enough in, you get a question. We're reasonable in that regard, but you have no editorial input into the fucking show.
I think we need to make a new tier. If you pay 20k, you can't vote one of us off the show.
Yeah, all right.
I'll take the 20k.
Yeah. I'm down for that, right? So, I am fucking down for that. But it was never about editorial input, right? You pay just to have the show exist, or it can not exist. And me and Duncan can go do something else. It's fine. That was the whole point. And there was still comments, even in the last one, in the YouTube channel, just like, well, why can't you just cut out the first 20 minutes where you talk about stuff? We're building up to it. I don't talk to Duncan between the show. I barely see Sam anymore. I'm just out on the fucking west coast of America in Vegas, losing my motherfucking mind, disconnected from reality, right? So we build
reality?
It. From
reality, no.
That's living like Anders, and he just got the fucking vibe set on.
Because I live in Vegas. It's not real. None of it's real. You know, it's just
like fair, you do live in a place where people are like, yes, I'm also building an esports arena right now. And of course, Vegas, it's going to be the new. What? Are you not aware of this esports thing, Richard?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also just to say, I'm contractually obliged to say Vegas will be the next major hub for esports. So just putting that out there. But anyway,
DreamHack Masters events.
So we build into the show and we talk some shit at the start of the show. So I'm going to talk about this thing. You used to read Loaded magazine, right? You remember Loaded?
I didn't really read it as much. Here's the thing, actually. You know the old joke, Rich, about Playboy, that, like, the articles are really good in it, which, by the way, they were, if you ever look at, like, the 60s.
Straight Fire, Hunter S. Thompson's been in there, Henry Miller, I think William Burroughs.
Here's the thing. I won't make that joke about Loaded, but there were some men's magazines that actually had half-decent writing. So, yeah, I did sometimes read some of them. Yeah, like over them, like, I can't lie. But, you know, sometimes I read the odd article.
There was actually a better offshoot from Loaded. I think it was called Jack. Had Jack Nicholson as the logo for it.
I got scared for a minute. Like, it was an offshoot from Loaded. It's called Jack. Why were you reading that, Rich?
Yeah. Just hot ripped studs in it. It was great. It was called Jack. I thought that was a better magazine. It certainly had a lot more interesting articles in it, whereas Loaded was pretty much like, it was kind of more like the more laddish. It had articles, but it was off that FHM kind of vibe, right?
It was basically just a bunch of cunts who were like a C-grade Liam Gallagher.
Yeah.
Trying to act that's cool.
Yeah. And then what I always thought was great about it was the concept of what they call at the time lads mags, which obviously have fallen by the wayside now. Lads, because they're culturally not acceptable. I thought it was really interesting because the concept of them was created by women in marketing departments. In fact, the person who came up with the idea for the Lads Mag was a woman who had seen the success of women's magazines and wanted a male equivalent. And it was really funny because these were always framed as being misogynistic. But it was actually they were the invention primarily of women from big companies, big publishing companies and marketing departments. You can go check that out if you give a fuck. Anyway, why are you talking about Loaded magazine, Richard? The best thing they had in it was porno-likes. Now, do you remember porno-likes? You must remember porno-likes.
I assume it's just people in porn who look like a celebrity or something, right?
Yes, absolutely. And they, every month, in the front, in the letters page, you would have porno-likes, right? And it was basically like someone had watched some porn. They put little black circles on any fluids or any genitals, and it would just be celebrities. And they were fucking hilarious. It was unreal, some of the porno-likes. And I used to do we had a thread on Cadred, where it was basically esports porno likes, and there were some great ones on there, right? I don't know if we had any for you. I'll see if I can find.
Let me just clarify. I think this is getting misinterpreted. Do you mean people in porn that look like celebrities, or you put like a cover over celebrity that look like?
No. They just look like them already.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it's funny. It wouldn't be funny if I just superimposed someone's face over.
No, but I mean, like, you found...
That would also, I would imagine...
I think that's called deviancy, Sam. I think it's called deviancy.
I believe you might also be open for being sued if you do that in Loaded magazine.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like...
Now, all of this
to get dragged up the arse.
Yeah, all of this is a ridiculous build-up. I will say, because of that thread, I have always had an unbelievable eye for esports lookalikes, just in movies, porn, whatever I happen to be watching. And I was bored out of my mind last night. I've been sick. I had a bit of a cold. I've not felt well for about a week, actually. And I've just been watching movies, and mainly old movies. So I'm sure you're familiar with the Evil Dead trilogy, Sam Raimi, straight fire movies, obviously. And I was watching Army of Darkness, the weakest of the three, no doubt about it. And would you fucking believe it, Duncan? There is an Anders lookalike.
Oh, no, Anders?
No, it's Anders.
I guess it makes sense, because obviously it's set in like medieval type setting, and you imagine there's a lot of...
It blew my mind. It is basically an older red-headed Anders. He plays a guy called Henry the Red. You can click on the picture. Just bring this up. It blew my mind. I couldn't take the movie fucking seriously for the rest of it. That's basically reamed out Anders after he's been negotiating with Joe Miller for ESL. So I brought it full circle. Which
would obviously be some sort of a Evil Dead type scenario, some would say.
Yeah. Indeed. The esports dead. So there you go.
His mistake was opening up the dreaded fucking ledger of ESL, trying to get in there, wasn't he? So
yeah.
So I know what happens when that happens.
So anyway, there you go. There's 20 minutes of bullshit, probably. And now we can talk about Counter-Strike. I feel like I've eased into the show and I can plaster on that fake smile and just plow through this shit one more time.
One thing I will say though, Rich, is
what's up?
To be fair, considering, obviously it's a very, very small minority of people who post all the stupid comments compared to the number of people who post the views. But it's actually mad where, even though I don't really buy into it, like, I usually only make content if I have something in mind specifically that I want to say about that team or player or something. So, for example, I don't make a video on every roster move, even though I could, just because some of them would just be like, well, I've already said all these points 10 times, or, I don't even have like, for example, Drake and going to Fnatic. Don't really have many thoughts on it, to be honest. I don't really know what to think about him. That's one where I don't have much to say. But what's mad is I've noticed if you ever do reading comments, there's always loads of people, even on those ones, that are like, but what do you think about it? Do you have any thoughts on that? When's the video coming on that? So, like, to be fair, people actually do just want to hear us talk about any old shite on this show, except our own lives, potential ends of our careers, people attacking us,
And let's be honest as well. I think it's incredible that anyone would take the high ground about what content is in the show when half the cunts who tune in are desperately hoping you say something so they can clip it and then send it to sponsors and people like they're doing the same for me. Like, probably half our audience are the kind of like pathetic, sad cunt who are just here to hope we fuck up our lives by saying something so irredeemably outrageous. Keep tuning in. Every week hasn't happened.
Probably happened sooner or later.
And please watch your ads.
Actually, you know what? I'll invoke it happening, Rich, by saying the ultimate famous last words. He says, "I actually think we might be beyond that."
Oh, there it is.
That's going to be one day, isn't it? It's going to be like when I'm boring. It's going to be me like, I think we're beyond that. Anyway, and I'm out of the whole industry. So.
Yeah, well. I like, as I was saying, I feel like I'm kind of out of the industry at the moment. It's really bizarre. But I certainly do still follow Counter-Strike. We had a bit of a hangover from the last show in terms of we did 2 hours and 15 minutes and we didn't even cover because it was like a 4-event week. So I'm just going to pick up the show with a nice sort of easy topic, one I'm sure is going to be right up your alley. I want to talk about the Imperial. And the Imperial, for those that don't know, they're an organization that's been around actually probably longer than some people think. I certainly knew them from Counter-Strike Source, where they were primarily a Danish organization. They had a team with Fetish in it. They won a few events. They were kind of one of the top teams, if not for a very brief period of time, the top team in Counter-Strike Source. It was around about the same time that Reason Gaming with the kind of Czech Slovak mix that had Guardian on it were the number one team. And they went away for a while, and then they came back and in about 2015, I want to say, and they picked up an old Danish team. And since then, they've had a lot of kind of hodgepodge lineups, different nationalities, players you probably haven't heard of. And then most recently, what they were known for was kind of throwing a team together that had certainly I would say a lot of unproven players. You had, Nexa in there, who, if I remember rightly, was briefly at Renegades because Kassad scouted him. You had Nuki in there, who is the Lithuanian player. Tensky, who's kind of like, another one of those like Danes who are good but not quite good enough, like the Assyrian kind, but probably is a little bit better. And then obviously the FPL starlet that came through, also from Lithuania, Esperanto. Most recently, they added Crystal, who had a pretty poor time of it in Sprout, and Penta before that, and really hasn't been doing anything of note for some time. But they've actually been going on a tear, and they've been winning events in 2018. Certainly not tier 1 events, but I think the first time we really started talking about Imperial on the show was when they won Copenhagen Games. They beat Heroic in a best-of-3 series, on Danish soil. Pretty good result there. And then on that 4-event week, they went to DreamHack Open Summer and actually beat Optic to a very accomplished Danish side that we thought maybe might be doing something a bit more in the final. And they finished ahead of Gambit. They finished ahead of North. They finished ahead of Renegades. They finished ahead of Red Reserve. This is a team that's kind of, come out of nowhere to sort of prove that while you might not feel comfortable saying they are comfortably tier 1, they've certainly now got enough notable results against tier 1 opposition to sort of pay attention to if you want to compartmentalize your Counter-Strike. So I wanted to just get your opinion on, I know you were at an event, so you probably didn't see the games. I've finally caught up and watched all the VODs from this event. I just wanted your thoughts on this team and whether or not this is another one of those flash in the pans. Like, I know you were super critical of Space Soldiers at the time when they started coming through. I've noticed.
Still waiting for some.
So what do you think of Imperial then? Are they another Space Soldiers to you?
No, because actually the thing about the Imperial lineup is there's a logic to the fact that they could be a good team. I mean, first of all, again, some of these players like Esperanto, they're coming out of FPL and they're coming out of a region that doesn't have a top team, doesn't have even a history of a top team. So I could believe he's a good player, and that now that he's actually on an international squad, he's got a chance to potentially succeed beyond the limitations of what you'd seen before. So those are the most likely players actually to turn out to be really good, is players that just come from a region where that's the reason you've never heard of them, is they're sort of in the fucking Bane pit and they would, under their own steam, never be able to make it up to the tier 1 level. So obviously I'm going to go ahead and assume they don't have a lot of resources and money in the org itself. So again, It's probably a scenario comparable to Penta, if you remember that squad, which was kind of, if Mouse was a poor man's FaZe, then Penta was a poor man's Mouse, and hence why Mouse was always able to get their players. So I would assume it's a similar scenario. I'd assume Imperial's that sort of a squad. Again, if you look at the names in the squad, people like Crystal and Tensky are never going to set the world alight, but look, at least they're veterans. They've had their time in decent teams. They've been to majors. So if you have those sorts of players, but they're not supposed to be your star players, and then the star players are the newer players, I can buy that. That seems vaguely plausible. And plus, as you mentioned, the tournaments they're going to, this is one of the weird things. That yes, if you look at all the DreamHack Open events, they're not anywhere close to tier 1. But what's cool about them is you do get teams in them that play in tier 1 events, and then you get the teams just below that. So they're actually really good, I find, at showing you the real level of those teams that tend to like place 8th place at a real tournament. Because when you play that few games, you're always like, well, how good was this team? Like, how good is it to sort of lose to FaZe 16-12? Like, is that better than losing 16-4? You can't really weigh that up. But when you get to see that team go and play Optic, Gambit, like us at North, you actually get a sense of how good they are. So they seem like a team with some potential. If I had to guess, I'd imagine much like the aforementioned Penta, it's probably a couple of players who move on and become legit players. I doubt the team as a whole keeps rising through the ranks. It's a pretty reasonable place they're in already.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was interesting, I mean, obviously it was, the DreamHack format by now, where it's, the best of ones and then you go into a best of 3. So it was a best of 1 win that they got over North. But this was at a time when, people are like saying, oh, North are back, they're looking better, this is the best they've been. They went to an event. They should have been the clear favourites to win this event, I would say, based on current form going into it. I was kind of anticipating maybe a Gambit North final because North and Optic were in the same side of the bracket. So it didn't happen like that. And I think the other results they got, like I say, they beat AGO. They obviously beat Optic. They beat Gambit 2-0 as well. I mean, this is the kind of tournament run where I don't know. Like I said, we have this habit in Counter-Strike of like really blowing things out of proportion. Like one freak result at a B-tier tournament, and all of a sudden they're the next big thing. And, I think some people were guilty of that with teams like Space Soldiers in the past. But I don't know. I've got a feeling about this. I think I agree with you. I think like the core of this team, in particular, Esperanto seems to be an incredible find. He was like the next FPL star that everyone was saying was probably, he's cheating, he's toggling, he's bullshit or whatever, because he's had such a high win rate. And he just seems to be a really good kid who's got a very good head for Counter-Strike, good aim, good reactions, but crucially, like Rops, incredible game sense.
By the way, when you mentioned Nexa as well, unfortunately for him, like, it's not like he really got a fair shake of it. He was put in a fucking Australian team, and he's not I'm going to go ahead and guess he probably has half decent English, but he has no connection to Australian culture. Yeah, he had his coach there, but then his coach brought him in specifically to be the fucking in-game leader. I don't think he was an in-game leader as far as I know. So I don't feel as though you can judge Nexa by how he was in Renegades. I think you've got to give him a fresh slate in that sense. So I could also believe he's going to be half decent.
Well, I also think as well, like just as a general point, I think it's like, you don't get to pay your dues, really. There's no, like, the progression in Counter-Strike is fucking savage. Like, you go from being the unproven star that everyone says you're cheating until someone is willing to take the heat and give you a chance and extend a hand and say, yeah, come join our team. I don't give a fuck even if you are cheating. You can come and cheat for us, right? And then they play, and then they go to LANs, and they show that they're not cheating, or they go to LANs and they flop, and maybe they still weren't cheating, but they play bad, and then they get kicked from the team, and then you never hear about these guys again. And, there's been notable examples going back to 1.6 of players who, they hit this, like, meteoric rise, and then it just fucking peters out, and they just crash, and you're like, oh, do you remember that guy? Yeah, wasn't he good in 2009? What the fuck happened to him? And I think, for me, how it would work would be, like, if it was an analogous to sports, you would play in a not so good team and you would really stand out, and then you would play in a mediocre team, and then you would establish that you can hang at that level, and then a big team would give you a chance, and then it wouldn't matter so much whether you failed or not because you'd proven you had already climbed the ladder, so to speak. It doesn't work like that. I think there's a genuine risk of like talent being picked up a lot too soon. And I think that happened to Nexa, honestly. I think, first of all, the team environment wasn't right. As you said, the only sort of cultural connection, the only thing that would have made him feel remotely comfortable was Kassad, who was the guy vouching for him. I don't know if the rest of the team had any confidence in him or a pick, and whether it was just like, fuck it, we'll just try this. And then after Renegades, it was like, where the fuck's he going to go? It wasn't like he made a good enough impression that somebody said, oh, yeah, we'll definitely try him. It just looked like he was another flop, and it could have just as easily been that we never hear from Nexa again, and like there was a guy who retired like this week, like a guy called Mike S. I
saw that where, because the thing is, it's just because this is the downside of following that Joe Cardali. Obviously, he retweets stuff like that. So I just saw it on my feed, like, I retire from Counter-Strike. And obviously, your first thought is, did you ever play Counter-Strike? Like, fucking hell.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's not retiring when you're not even good and you just don't play it anymore.
But obviously, when Mike was, when Mike, and I've met him, he's a great guy. I know him going all the way back to Source, where a lot of people, because he was out of the Benelux scene, being Dutch, a lot of people assumed he was cheating, and he never got any chances on real big teams. And there was only one real big Dutch team anyway, and that was Fnatic, obviously. But he did have that spell on Penta, and he had some decent LAN performances and played well. It wasn't like, it's not like he was a fucking terrible player, but again, just opportunity. It was like he played well, but not well enough to stand out. And when the team collapsed, get another chance. It's like, it's that slippery slope. It's like, you've really got to fucking be like a Rops almost, I think, if you're a younger player. You've got to have this like explosive impact. But anyway, back to the point, I definitely think the Imperial are a sort of an exciting team. And it does go to show as well that if you want to be, for want of a better phrase, like a cheapskate, and you want to go out and scout, there is talent there that can go to these tier 2 events and not just get you results and you can use them as human billboards and all that bullshit, but actually win you a fucking trophy. Like, it's entirely plausible now. I think where Counter-Strike is, where sure, the top 10 isn't as strong as it has been, probably it's one of the all-time weakest top 10s in terms of strength and depth, but there's also a lot more talent now, I think, in that, you know, in the youth coming through in the tier 2, and Imperial are indicative of that. That being said, I'm now about to do a connective rant, one of my pet peeves, and I'm sure this is not going to go over particularly well, because I like Face It. Obviously, a lot of love for Face It was there at the start. A lot of love for everyone at Face It, and indeed Mikey, who you might know, Face It Mikey, sort of the community manager who goes onto it. But I will say this, because of this battle that they're having with ESEA, and the economics of that, and again, I think people know my view on it. FPL certainly will never be perfect because no company can be perfect, but they've never installed Bitcoin miners on your computer. They've never had a guy who owned the company like that looks at your Steam chat. They've never mocked the disabled. You know, there's a lot to love about Face It compared to ESEA. And you can forget that they do that shit, but they do that shit. Also looks as well now that they might even be inflating the numbers of how many people are actually playing ESEA, potentially ahead of some sort of buyout. Who knows? Who cares? It's ESEA. They are synonymous with shady practices. So FPL win hands down. But obviously, it is about market share. And one of the things that I do really find a bit almost cringeworthy is how fucking much they talk up FPL as if it's, you know, we're bringing through the youth and it's now become an essential part of the ecosystem. That now, sure,
as well.
Yeah, it's got its success stories. Rops is a huge example of that. But I saw this tweet from Mikey, and I'll give you this here and put it under the guy who definitely does look like Anders. And this is where he said, Imperial, a team that started as an FPL mix with few players with zero experience underwater for months, with no sponsors, tier 1 orgs passing by their humble demands, turning into a team that wins international and tournaments. You inspire us all, and I bet the new kids are watching. And I think, okay, dude, like, it's pretty cool, like, what they've achieved, but really, nah, like, this isn't quite right. This isn't, like, an accurate representation of history. First of all, you know, to say that they have zero experience is disingenuous. I'm certainly not too sure if you would ever call anything like humble demands. First of all, you would need to know what their demands are. Second of all, I know enough about the scene to know that when people fucking want a salary, but you've got no proof of how good you actually are, I don't know if those demands are so humble, actually. I think very rarely, right? Like that's the reality of it. And you know, again, to label, there was some good teams there. In a national tournament, I suppose, technically, sure. Like, it's a great story, but there's a marketing aspect to this. What this tweet essentially says isn't congratulations, Imperial. It says
it's a mad humble brag.
It says Imperial wouldn't have existed without FPL. Sign up to FPL today, and maybe it could be you. I mean, it's an advertisement disguised as a congratulatory tweet. And if people ever wonder why FPL are sort of really doubling down hard on Doc, this player that everyone talks about.
That's also exactly my take on it as well. It's like they're too eager, they're too horny to think they're going to get ROPs every month, aren't they?
Well, it would be very good for business if they did get ROPs all the time. But here's the reality about Doc. I'm not going to spout any theories because I said I wouldn't. I replied a tweet to Mikey saying, I think you guys are going to have egg on your face if you keep defending him as much as you are.
I did appreciate, by the way, how all those people were like, "No, look at him as usual, just playing coy." Like, obviously, we want to hear your theory. Well, he didn't tweet his theory, did he? He just said to another human being, like, "Oh, I won't tell you my theory because you probably won't be interested." It's almost like you weren't addressing the world, Rich. You were just addressing sort of the person with the @ sign, I think, before the comment.
The way it was framed on Reddit was that I just tweeted it out and as if I was.
They made it sound like you were like, "Guys, I've got a secret, haven't I?" And then just left. Like, you didn't do any of that, though, did you? Though, so I'm just going to say that.
I definitely did.
Have you noticed, Al? That is the formula for Reddit, though. It goes like this: like, if I just change the context of your comment completely, look how stupid it looks. It's like, Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Well, keep running that one into the ground, guys.
Yeah, no, it's stupid, right? But so that's fine and dandy. I expect stupidity. But what I will say about Doc is just the demonstrable facts. These are facts that and it goes to show how stupid the community is by and large, how they are always a sucker for an easy story that will
narrative, don't they?
Yeah, of course they love a narrative. Again, it was like, remember, I'll bring it up every time because it's one of the most absurd stories, a narrative that personally affected me. The idea that Babam was being bullied at that event when in fact Babam was being a fucking mad diva cunt. The idea that I can bully a fucking grown man who's maybe even older than me and has 2 kids, is patently absurd. But of course, because it goes instead of actually doing commentary, I think there's probably an assumption he's got a problem. Right, because if you listen to his commentary, you would assume that he wasn't right, and maybe had some issues. And as a result of that, you immediately cast him in the role of, somebody that's not capable of defending himself, which, is fine. Because of that, it's the narrative, isn't it? Well, Richard is obviously bullying him. Look, he's taller than him. He's a bully, obviously. It's like this simple, 80s revenge of the nerds bullshit fantasy in their mind. It's just an easy story. And this is exactly what's happened with Doc. Everybody, I read an article, it might even have been on PC Games then, a publication we know and love, where they were saying that, he's being abused because he's a Muslim. And I was like, what?
Any proof for that?
What? It's like...
Sounds like a pretty outrageous thing to even say if you don't have proof of who he is. So.
The reality is this, okay? Here's the reality when it comes to Doc, and this is something by Doc's own admission, whoever Doc may be. So first of all, the only proof that this is even a player is a fucking selfie that Faceit got him a take while doing a background check, which I'm sure they did, and I'm sure they've corroborated that an identity corresponds to it. But he looks like a fucking football manager regen in it, so that's fine. Might just have one of them faces, right? He doesn't speak, right? He doesn't produce content. He doesn't play on cam. He's played on at least 2 accounts with VAC bans, 3 that belong to a cheat coder. Who, and if you go through his videos, despite being 17, was playing Source at a competent level and playing against teams like Very Games in 2012, supposedly, if you go off his YouTube channels. Meanwhile, all the videos that were on that YouTube channel were submitted under the name of the guy from Norway who just so happens to be a cheat coder. And if you look into the name of the cheat coder, he's got an account on a forum about social engineering. Now, far be it from me to suggest there's something not quite right about any of this. But the reality is, even if Doc is who he says he is and is a legitimate player, that is enough to end the prospect of a pro career for anybody else. Can you imagine now if Flusher or JW or somebody that had allegations of cheating and had gone on to prove themselves and win majors, can you imagine, right, if it then came to pass that they had played on an account owned by a cheat coder, and then it also came to pass that they had played on accounts with VAC bans? Sure, we don't know if they're CSGO VAC bans because it doesn't tell you what game, but there's a VAC ban on the account. Now, if that came out now about an established player who has proven themselves at LAN repeatedly, I think their career would be over. I think if it came out that Flusher had 2 VAC banned accounts, sure, there would be a Valve investigation, okay? And let me tell you, I don't know about these Valve investigations a lot of the time because there have been other players in the past that have been linked to VAC banned accounts, and it's kind of just always been they look into it, sure, but they always say, well, there's not really enough evidence here. It makes me wonder about what's recorded, what isn't, what they can prove, how comfortable they feel about putting it out in the public domain, which is quite telling because the one they've doubled down on repeatedly was, of course, Dreamer, the Bulgarian player. So they must be absolutely certain because there have been other players who have been associated with her. Now, again, so imagine this. This is just put it out there. If a top tier pro came out and we were like, holy shit, there's 2 VAC banned accounts, and he used to play on an account with a cheat coder that the cheat coder owns, and his story doesn't quite add up about his past and what level he played at and that would be it. These guys would just be like terminated from their teams. They would be banned from Valve tournaments most likely. But even if they weren't, I doubt anybody had picked them up again, and they would be castigated and mocked and humiliated by the community. Now imagine being a player who has done nothing, doesn't even talk, get paid, right? Lied about being a mute, then paid somebody to call for him to sit and watch his game and call for him for 10 hours. Pretending it was him, and then turned around and said, no, I just pay a guy to talk on my behalf, right? Like, guys, I'm just saying, I'm not even saying he is a cheater because I've got no evidence of that, and I wouldn't ever say anything without evidence. But I'll say this. His story fucking stinks, and if this story was retroactively applied to a pro player who have proven themselves, the same community that are up Doc's fucking arsehole right now and saying he's being bullied and it's a witch hunt and all this other absolute demonstrable nonsense, they would be calling for that player to be banned, for the pro player.
This is basically the fucking test case for credulity for everything up to having a literal screenshot showing he's cheating. Is like, if you can just pass all this by, as you're saying now, and go, yeah, but he might be a girl or a Muslim, therefore he must be innocent. It's like, you will just believe anyone. You'll literally believe anyone. That's why I said the test case for credulity. Like, you cannot possibly be convinced.
His story might well be true. He might have...
Would still be the most outrageous story ever, even if it was true, though.
Yeah, he might have the most unreasonable parents. He still played on 2 VAC banned accounts. He still played on 3 accounts associated with a known cheat coder. Not just a cheater, a cheat coder.
I also love the way, by the way, he's sort of got a variant of the classic. I mean, everyone loves it. You remember that classic one from the Steam forum where that guy's like, help, my account is banned. Yeah, no, it's the one where he goes, my account is banned. Thing is, my brother was playing before and he was cheating. And he goes, listen, my father will now explain. And it goes, now the father will speak. And he goes like, hello, I am the father and he was not cheating. Can you unban him? Thanks. Yeah. It's like that. His story's like, it's like he thought of that really quickly. Like, I can only assume Doc is in some kind of scenario like the fucking Usual Suspects, and he's just looking around. He's just Googling. Oh, yeah, this is me, your brother. I mean, I'm not my own brother. My dad's going to talk now, Mikey. Hello, this is Doc's dad. He's a good lad, but I don't let him use the mic. Right. It's me again. Oh, sounds similar. Yeah, it's my dad, isn't it? So I would sound similar to me. Like, just unreal, isn't it?
Yeah. So just to put all the facts out there, right? My understanding is that, as I said, they have done a background check. The name that he plays under and the IP and everything, it all correlates to a real person and a real address. And they've had communication with him. As a person, and he has admitted to having played on these accounts with that belonged to the cheat coder, saying that he just used to share accounts with his friends, and apparently this is all backed up by IPs. The cheat code is Norwegian. We all know Doc's in Holland, and this is that. But I'm just saying the point is that FPL are literally like, I could not imagine any company wanting to like defend this. Because it's an absurd story. It's absolutely absurd. And as I said, it doesn't alter the facts. And the facts are that even if a player played on an account that got VAC banned, even once if a pro player did it, there is now cause for serious question about their fucking validity. Was it them who cheated? Were they using the account to test out cheats? Before they were applying them to their account, are they likely to do it again? All these questions start coming out. And, again, just to give you another example, Sabrosa, right? Now, my views on Sabrosa are quite clear. I think they're heavily implied, but I never publicly accused him of cheating. Never. And never said it because there is no evidence of that. There are certainly some outrageous fucking clips, perhaps some of the most outrageous we've ever seen. Certainly more questionable than the famous Flusher clips. But I did a video saying, you know, a lot of these are those weird aim lock clips that everyone talks about. And if you're going to use this as evidence to say Sabrosa is cheating, but you see the same clip of like Olaf Meister or Crims or whoever else it is, and you say, well, they're not cheating because I know who they are, then you're a hypocrite because you're using the same evidentiary standard to condemn somebody, but you're giving the more famous name the pass, and that's unacceptable. And that was the premise of the video. Well, bizarrely, one of the most popular videos on my YouTube channel. But again, everybody, like, Sabrosa's dead in the fucking water, isn't he? He's like, he just now plays with the absolute detritus of ESEA. He's on that, and now he's just moved over. He was on that French Canadians, and now he's had a chance to play in Ghost. That's not going to last. And that must be awkward as fuck, because Steele did a video. If I was with you and Moses, wasn't it, where he said, yeah, Sabrosa's cheating.
Yeah.
So that must be an awkward fucking conversation. Definitely doesn't prove the come cheat for us theory or anything. But, you know, the whole community condemned fucking Sabrosa. Right? Condemned him. Won't do it for Doc because, but he's the little kid and the narrative and the story. It's ridiculous. There is actually a much higher evidentiary standard to condemn him. And certainly if I was a company and he was going to come into my tournament environment and be playing against pro players and potentially taking money from them, I'd just be like, you know what? This is too fishy. I don't care if it's all true. I can't take the risks. I must protect the environment. And it's this fantasy that they have about, Doc will be the new Rops. Doc will be the new Rops. If he can't talk on a microphone, when's this motherfucker ever getting to a LAN? Well, when he's 18. You think as if parental influence just has a cut-off point like that. If your parent is the kind of mad, deranged cunt that will not let you talk on a microphone, but will buy you a top-level PC with all the latest graphics cards and everything else so you can run Counter-Strike at the highest specifications, why are they just going to like, well, you're 18 now, son. All your life choices are completely valid. I support you. You know? Like, none of it makes sense.
What you've hit on there, though, that is the thing that tilts me about this whole topic, is why am I even hearing about this player? He doesn't play for a pro team. He will never play for a pro team. He is not even in an amateur team. It's not like he comes from Bosnia or something and there's no chance to even get on a semi-pro team. No, this is someone where it's only due to Faceit that I even have to hear about all this bullshit. All because Faceit was so horny to get all these young talents who they think will become the next Rops and will become fabulous players in Esperanto and go on to do great things, that they have actually devalued their own project. What is the title of the thing? Faceit Pro League. The whole point is it's for pros. Now, if you are at the level of a pro, you're allowed to join it. But this is what I don't get. FPL is a fucking privilege, not a right. It should be a threshold to get in there. The threshold isn't just be as good as them. No, you are going to play with pros who we are trying to encourage to play in a semi-pro environment so that these talents who are as good as them could show themselves. So if you don't have a mic, I'm sorry, you don't even get in FPL. Forget that. If you've seen this person doesn't ever use a mic, not allowed in FPL. If then you find out we got to use a mic, oh, is this really you? No, I have a guy who calls me, right? You're also not in as well. There's another basic threshold. You have to call for yourself. Because think about it. People are going to think, what do you mean? No, he's calling though. Why would that be fair? Why is some cunt who isn't even as good as this random guy allowed to call for you? What, so if I just have my fucking cousin, if I was as good enough to be an FPL, I'd just have my cousin call. Is that fine, is it? No. Why would pro players have to put up with this shit? Especially when you've kicked out like World Edit, etc. for not speaking English. A guy who's been in God knows how many majors. So like the whole thing is just like, it shouldn't even be a story. Like this should be such a low level issue of like a guy who none of us have to worry about because he's not in any way related to the pro scene, might cheat and has a really fucked up storyline and seems to like to lie a lot. Like to me, it would be at its appropriate level, which is it would be a very minor story on odd threads, you know, whereas this whole thing actually, as you've said, has actually ended up blown up in face, and obviously has just been a waste of everyone's time pretty much. Just the guy still, as far as we can tell, is not in anywhere on a path to pro.
Well, yeah, and just as a final point, it's worth just adding to the sort of, overwhelming amount of evidence, right? Remember how Rops was being called a cheater, and again, one of the things I'll always respect JW for was, when he was like, "Fuck it, can we not just ban this retard?" and the clip went viral, he immediately came out and said, "You know what? That's really harsh. It's unreasonable of me." And then when Rops did get picked up by Mouse Sports and started doing well, JW apologized again and said, like, it's a little bit embarrassing, like to have even held that opinion, especially because he knows what it's like because he had the same shit. So I definitely respect him for that. Not a lot of pros have that level of insight. But again, Face It have framed it going, "Oh, this witch hunt against Doc is like Rops all over again." Rops has never played on a VACBand account. He's never been associated with cheat coders. He used to talk on a microphone. He used to play on a camera. Right? Like, I mean, this is all, it's not anywhere near the fucking same. And then when it hit crucial point where pros were like debating whether or not he was legit, he flew to fucking London to play in front of all of the Face It staff for an entire weekend, played and proved himself. And after that, it was like a fucking slam dunk. Like, no one has ever gone so far to prove themselves in the history of esports, apart from maybe that female Overwatch player.
And by the way, don't forget this detail. This is the worst detail of all. Like, again, because I have a threshold you have to meet to ever be relevant as a pro, this detail, even though it's circumstantial, would kill the whole thing dead for me instantly forever. It's not like Doc had to fly to the UK and had to convince these incredibly strict parents to let him go. No. He is allowed to play 10 hours a day. Presumably, he's not locked in his fucking basement. He does leave the house. All he had to do was go on a train for 3 hours to where Chris J lives, where Chris J offered to let him come and verify who he is and that he's a real player. And it wouldn't even have to be necessarily something live. Chris J would just vouch for him. He'd never know. No one else would need to know his identity or any of that shit. It's actually the easiest out I think I've ever heard of for someone who, except maybe someone who lives in America and also could be close by and you could drive there. I can't think of an easier out to solve all the problems and the questions without having to reveal whatever the sensitive information is. So the fact that the guy was like, "No thanks," is like, I'm already out. Like, again, you haven't met the threshold to be an FPL and be worth, like, notable at this point in time. Forget like, but innocent until proven guilty. Yeah, that's a system we designed for courts to keep innocent men from being fucking hung like 100 years ago. It's not supposed to be like you have to let someone in FPL unless you can conclusively prove he cheats. Like, no. It's a privilege, like I say, not a right.
Yeah. So, and again, just think about the story again behind not meeting Chris J. Like, you can't come to my house because my parents mustn't know about it. Do you ever leave the house? Like, do you ever leave the house? Or am I supposed to literally believe you go to school and then come straight back home? And they've timed how long the walk or the drive is, and you have to be back. And if there's a minute either side, it is utter madness to suggest that there is not even the capacity to meet another pro just to prove you are real. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've never heard anything like this in all my years of esports. And again, the community are like saying it's a witch hunt, and it's like, no, this is grade A bullshit. And you would absolutely crucify a pro player if they had these details in their past that Doc does. And that's assuming Doc is one person, a real person, or anything else. But you would brutalize a pro player if an old VACBAN account turned up, even if they said, well, Valve investigated it and cleared me. And again, remember, Dreamer has always maintained his innocence. The only people who ever go to bat for him are the fucking Bulgarians, And we've seen what a fantastic player he is at LAN. So, just fucking saying. Right, we can now move on to another topic. I think we've exhausted that and fed the fans what they want. So the other big piece of news we had to gloss over was the release of the Panorama UI. It finally came out. It was slated for the end of 2017, came out obviously this month in 2018, which isn't that bad in Valve time dilation. I still think that's pretty good. But it's come out and basically, to give people an idea, it's very similar to what happened in Dota 2, where it's a way of using game assets and models in the menu and everything. So you can have like better menu, better interactivity with actual in-game assets, and there's a few other optimization improvements. Now, it's been a bit of a mixed bag, I'd say, in terms of reaction to the release of the Panorama UI. There's been a lot of people saying, oh, wow, they're updating CS again and giving it a lick of paint and trying to make it look good. What does this mean? Could this be free to play? Could it mean there's going to be a deluge of content? And then actually at the other end of the spectrum, there's been a lot of people saying, well, this is, too little too late. All you're doing is updating the menu. What's the big deal? There's still fundamental issues with the game that haven't been fixed, and you're going to do this. So I wanted to get your take on what side of the fence you're on, and then I'll go ahead and sort of give my opinions about it.
Well, one thing that it's always worth pointing out, and not because people are stupid who don't realize this, it's just one of those things where when your brain simplifies things, you can make this mistake, which is I very much doubt whoever would be working on balancing a gun or updating the engine of Counter-Strike has anything to do with designing the UI. I would go ahead and say those are distinct people who probably have very little overlap. So using the angle of why is this coming out and not, a new gun or something? It's it's not really like that. That is equivalent to being the guy who's why are you working on squids when we should be curing cancer? It's it's a different scientist, mate. It's totally irrelevant. There's no time lag because that guy's working on something else. So first of all, I'll just say that because I'm not really a graphics guy myself that much, and I'm not really that sure myself that graphics have that big a deal, especially when this is menu graphics. With that said, it makes it look a bit slicker, so I guess it's okay. I don't really have anything against it. I did think though that I was amazed at the amount of positive comments though. People actually getting hyped about it when again, it's just graphical, isn't it? I don't really know what was so exciting about it. It's kind of just a nonplus to me in some basically this combined with Valve just memeing on their own fucking CS Twitter account has just shown me how utterly fucking pleb some of the CS crew are in terms of the people on Reddit. If that's enough to please you, fucking hell, how low's your threshold? It's just a very minor thing for me.
I'll give a little bit of devil's advocatory there. I remember when they did this Panorama update and the new UI update in Dota 2, and it was a little bit underwhelming when it first came out. And there was, and you know what the Dota community are like? They're very vocal in their criticisms. I shouldn't even discuss Dota stuff on the show, but they're very selective in their criticisms. For example, there was a pro player just a few days ago who said, "Wouldn't the world be a better place if Hitler had killed all the Russians?" Yeah. And which of course is an outrageous thing to say, to pretty much advocate for the genocide of an entire nation of people.
Even though I'm also sure, because I know the circumstances, that it was obviously a moment of rage, and he doesn't really mean that as a factual statement. With that said, though, that is actually 10 times worse than dropping an accidental N-bomb. Let's be real. The sentiment behind that is way worse.
Sure. I would agree because there's an.
I'm saying it to Russian people.
Yeah. Now, what was interesting about the community reaction, and I remember this
was funny. I saw it.
Yeah, they were like, "Can all these libtards just dial it down a bit?"
I'm not exaggerating. In the thread that was in, I saw highly upvoted comments which themselves featured heavily anti-Semitic humor.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
The sort of thing that would not only never be upvoted on CSGO Reddit, it would be in the minuses and it'd be grayed out of the bottom, if not straight up removed, because obviously we have moderation on Global Offensive, but also would be massively called out by community figures.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? No hit pieces about this art, about this comment. It hasn't, and I'll tell you exactly why. Games journalists want to go to the international, so they want access to players and content because they know it. They get a huge traffic spike, so they will not write anything bad about Dota players ever. Never happens. There's been numerous Dota players that have been banned from Twitch for using the N-word. There was one player whose name escapes me where he literally asked the player, "Oh, your name, is that a racial epithet name or another racial epithet name?" You can find the quote for yourself. And no coverage on that. No one cares. And interestingly enough, the Dota community do not care. They don't care about this. I saw the response from Team Liquid. I thought, well, this is going to be harsh, right? Like, I mean, this is really bad. Think about it. It's Dota. Think about the huge Russian community in Dota. Think about the Russian players, the Russian content creators. Think about how, you know, if you create Dota content, there's a huge component of that is Russians. It's Russian people. It's got a much bigger foothold than any other esports title in the CIS region. And you are saying you want that region to have all been massacred by Hitler in World War II. And I was like, Team Liquid have really, like, I don't know what they do here. Do they bench him before the international? I mean, that'd be big. Do they cut him? Well, no, what they did is they said, we are going to fine him and we are going to donate the money to a charity of, I think even it was like his choice or our choice. Well, you know, that isn't even a proportionate punishment to what's gone on in esports, right? Like, I mean, anyone else has a slip of that nature, and immediately it's like, well, this person can never work again, ever. This person can never work again, ever.
Even industry people have said those things in the past.
Yeah, this person can never work again, ever. That's you know, but there's people said, oh, what a classy response from Team Liquid. That's proportionate. Hopefully now we can move away from the drama. Imagine it, the Dota 2 subreddit saying, let's move away from the drama. This is a subreddit that have been completely, you know, to a degree, rightfully, I suppose. But every time there's something in the community, like, for example, ESL, who put on all these fantastic Dota tournaments, you would think ESL was Satan and had tried to do like what Riot Games had done and literally try and stop the development of Dota and stop it existing. No, they're one of the premium Dota 2 tournament organizers alongside PGL. Now, yeah, we all know the Facebook deal hasn't worked out the way a lot of people would like, and we all know that the fucking DMCAs of people streaming in-game is absolutely outrageous, and no one would ever support that if you know how the copyright law works, or just even out of propriety would anyone ever support that. But I mean, seriously, the idea that the Dota 2 community want to move away from the drama is fucking hilarious to me. So anyway, I'll stop jabbering on about the Dota community, but what I will say is they are propped up by this unbelievable sense of sort of entitlement, because it's like, well, we make the international possible, we commit to the prize fund, so we get what we want. And it's always been like that. It's one of the reasons why I've always strayed away from the Dota community. I think they are one of the most entitled, elitist, snippy arsehole communities. Just on Reddit, of course, which is where they congregate, to sort of have to deal with. And in regards to the panorama UI when it came out, they fucking hated it when it first came out. There was a lot of criticism for it being underwhelming, and is this what we've been waiting for? And look at all the bugs and no. But obviously now, if you look at it, the fucking how good Dota looks is fucking amazing. It's like the panorama UI is really, really fucking good. And I think in general, the Dota 2 community is sort of grateful for the improvements that Valve have made to how their game looks and how it performs in the menu and everything else. And as a Dota player myself, I certainly am. So for me, I think this is indicative of a long-term project to basically upgrade how good Counter-Strike looks. I think it might be underwhelming now, but I think Valve will commit to seeing the project through, and I think we get a version of Counter-Strike that looks almost on a par with Dota 2, and I think that would be a phenomenal achievement given how few people work on CSGO at Valve compared to the overwhelming amount of people that love to get involved with Dota 2 stuff. I'll also say as well, I think if it does lead to a spate of content, some new things in the game, because like the key isn't how the game looks. They have got to fix how matchmaking works. This has got to be the big project. That I shouldn't have to use a third-party service to get a quality matchmaking experience.
It is mental, isn't it? Like, here's the thing, okay? Here, I'll give you a great example, right, Rich? This, because obviously you can comment on this yourself. For anyone who thinks that, like, me and Richard, I mean, they say it less about me because I do content in the game now. But
sure.
Anyone who thinks that me and Richard are like just unilaterally biased against Riot Games and will always downplay everything about their game, which wouldn't fit with any of our history. I mean, you've always said it was a good game. You were quite early in on it as game. I've always said it's a great game in terms of the competitive side. But one thing that Riot actually killed partly inadvertently, was their matchmaking system is one of the best in the entire fucking esports landscape, as far as I'm concerned. Like, after having played it, after having known people who have played it a lot, actually, it seems like the tiers are reasonably well done. Who it matches you with is reasonably well done. Admittedly, it has the advantage that Counter-Strike will never have, which is there are set roles in the game. So even if someone's a dickhead, it's not like the equivalent of you playing a game and there's no goalkeeper. That very rarely happens, whereas in Counter-Strike, you could just have 5 players who just all want to do the same thing or nothing, So admittedly, there is a slight edge it has. But I always thought it was ludicrous, especially in the days when CS got massive, that there was no equivalent of Challenger, and that it wasn't until FPL we got it. People literally made out like it was just impossible. FPL did it.
Yeah. And, so I think, like, some of the things I'd like to see, for example, is they do this thing in Dota 2 called the Battle Cup. Do you play Dota at all?
No.
All right, okay. So what they do is they do this thing called a Battle Cup. It's every weekend. You can enter into a tournament with a team. And basically, it's like it starts at the quarterfinal stage. So you have to win, like quarterfinal, semifinal, and a final, and then you win. You've won a tournament, and you get some like Dota Plus points, and you get a little badge on your thing. And it's basically tournament play built into the client, right? And anybody can get involved in it. If you don't have a stack of 4 other players to play with, you can just enter as a free agent, and other players can assess whether they want to put you in or not. It's a really fucking cool feature. I'd like to see something like that in Counter-Strike. I'd like to see and they don't have anything like this in Dota, I don't believe. But I'd like to just see in both games, honestly. Why can't we create our own, like, sort of mini leagues and ladders with people we know? Why can't we have, like, use the matchmaking client to queue up against each other and have, like, league play, create our own tournament? All of this stuff has got to be doable. It feels like a no-brainer to me. Why I think with Panorama we're going to get better stats tracking based on the stats I've seen, on the overlay, and it shows ADR now. But you could just do so much more with matchmaking, and I think if you do that, then you get the Counter-Strike experience, because pub servers are an anachronism in 2018. The path to pro, it's unrecognizable from how it was when we were coming up, and they could just make it better. You could make it so you can consider yourself a competitive player without ever having to be professional, because people could create leagues and ladders and all this and integrate them into the client. I think all of that stuff would be fucking awesome. But yeah, so I'm hoping it's a thrust in that direction, and Valve will add some of the cool features we see in Dota 2. Basically give you more reasons to play the game, because now with the devaluation of skins, due to several decisions Valve have made, which I agree with and support, I think you need more incentives to play the game beyond just improving your rank or improving your skill. And I think when you get that, that's when it'll put it over the top. What do you think of the free-to-play theory? It's got to be headed that way eventually, right? Or do you think CS never goes free-to-play?
Like, here's the thing. I think it should, just in as much as, like, I mean, just look at the rev. They've made so much money off it. Like, at this point in time, I can only see it benefiting you to just open the doors to whoever still hasn't tried the game and might still come in, But if you do that, here's the downside. Unlike all the other games we're talking about, CS isn't developed enough in terms of things that can actually make you a lot of money. So I think they've got to bring out some new shit that actually you pay for. If I were them, I would have just done something like already, like in, say, 2015, when it was starting to get pretty big, I would have already said, right, it's getting pretty big. Fuck it. Make it free to play. But what you pay for is like operations or something, whatever, or you pay for a new map or something, like something simple like that people would almost certainly do if it was like $1 or $2 a time. But over the time of the game, you're going to make way more than the fucking $6 you buy it for when it's on sale now to get a second account to cheat on and pretend you're from the Netherlands and your mum's fucking Scientologist or something. Nice reference there. I already made a similar video actually about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I watched that. That's why I wanted to, get your thoughts.
Sure. And basically, yeah, that's one of the things I think is a big problem, is that this actually shows how big esports is compared to when we were first starting out in it, is that esports, the game that you played in esports wasn't esports. Like Counter-Strike, the game 1.6 is not esports. Esports was an incredibly small niche of Counter-Strike already are not the biggest game in the world, much, much smaller than World of Warcraft or something. So it was a niche of a niche. That's why it was something where people got paid $1,000 to be the best in the fucking world at their job, because it was so small. Esports is so massive now that, like, most of Counter-Strike is about being a competitive player. Even playing matchmaking is way more competitive than what a pub server was like back in the day. And one of the worst aspects of the game, in my opinion, is exactly that. They didn't learn the lesson of StarCraft 2, which is a normal casual player doesn't want to play a mimicked version of what you're playing in the fucking grand final of a major. They don't want to do that. It would be like if I could only in my entire life have ever played football by having to get 11 players and play on a regulation size pitch and play 90 minutes with an official referee there. I'd have never played football, Richard. It almost never happened. Instead, 99% of the football I've ever played was in a fucking yard somewhere, on the street, 5-a-side maybe, and maybe like 10 real matches ever in your entire life, you know. It wouldn't be fun to play in that environment if you were shit and you'd never played the game. You'd never get the ball. You'd never get a kick of the ball. You'd think, this is fucking pointless. How am I going to improve? This guy's way better than me. So the dumbest thing ever is that they didn't have this casual option. I mean, I've experienced it literally directly in my own life, where you get a player who's just started out and they're like, oh, I'll play CS with you. And you go, well, actually, mate, you can't. Like, basically, I'd need to get 3 other people since our ranks won't be the same. Or we'll have to just sit in a lobby for 45 minutes hoping someone joins and doesn't leave. Like, it's not going to be fun for any of us, you know. Like, someone once told me a similar story in StarCraft where they said they'd had so many friends who expressed interest in StarCraft. Or, for example, you know, their girlfriend would be like, hey, I'll start playing it. And they'd be like, well, first of all, there'd be no point, because if we play each other, I'd destroy you. We can't play together because, again, you know, like, it'd be too much of a mismatch. You know, what you have to do is you have to go away and play probably for a year or two, look at these guides, and maybe you might have a shot to one day play them. Like that. That's just no way to get, like, you'll never get the snowball effect there of having like the Fortnite type numbers of players, because that here's the thing. Don't think that Fortnite made that happen. What happens is you make a good game, you hopefully set up a lot of good conditions, and then whether it becomes a phenomenon like that's like a social snowball, you know. That's like the reason you aren't directly affecting that is because that's like a friend of a friend of a friend got someone into the game, and that's so many people deep that you didn't have any direct connection to the guy who then starts playing the game. So I really think Counter-Strike, I don't think it'd ever be as big as a Fortnite or whatever, but you know what? I think it could be twice as big if you had a legit easy way to get into the game, a way to try the game, and a casual way to play the game. I'd also probably, like, I wouldn't play a lot myself because I'm obviously mainly interested in the competitive aspect, but it'd probably be a fun way to play with people who are your casual friends if there was other options, you know?
Yeah, and look, I've said this before. One of the big fucking sort of resistances to free-to-play is that, it'll totally boost the number of cheaters. Everyone will be cheating. The game will be killed, stone dead. Like, first of all, you know, I've said this many, many times. The idea that cheating would massively increase as a percentage because you're not charging $15 for an account is absurd. It's an absurd premise. You have to understand why people cheat. Second of all, with all of the improvements they've made with the machine learning, the trust factor, which we still don't really know how it works, but it certainly seems to be working, seems to detect smurfs and certainly cheats. There was a thread, actually, I think, where it might have been that John McDonald might have replied to it, where basically someone was saying, like, I'm always getting paired up with cheaters, and a Valve employee had said, if you're always getting paired up with cheaters, you either are a cheater or you are playing with cheaters regularly in your games, like, to boost you, and that means trust factor is working as intended. I think they've made a lot of great improvements to the Valve anti-cheat, and honestly, I think for the level of intrusiveness it has, it's still a fantastic anti-cheat. It's not a popular opinion to say VAC is a good piece of software, but again, you have to think about the level of access it has to your PC.
It's also not supposed to be catching fucking Kaylee. It's supposed to be catching random idiots who really do get a very cheap cheat or a well-known one, and it actually does a pretty reasonable job of that, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and this is crucial to understand. Like, I mean, I've seen a lot of people complaining about, like, there's less and less people logging in and playing the game. And it's like, that same month, they've announced record numbers of people being banned. It's like, I'm not saying there's a fucking direct correlation between the two, but it must be impacting on the numbers. It's like, look, if if you want less cheaters playing the game, by extension, that means people who cheat aren't playing the game, and that means less people overall are playing the game. Now, I don't think free-to-play will see a massive boost in numbers of cheaters. I could be wrong, but I've said it for a while. I think if you want to beat the Asian market, you have to go free-to-play. I think if we do that, it's the right move. And it's certainly, for me, now the right move in the game's life cycle. Think about how many games that have been pay to play that have gone free to play later on in their life cycle. It's given them a second wind, a new reason for the developers to make content, because now all of a sudden it's actually justifiable. I think the things you've got to fix with CS, and hopefully, as I said, the panorama is the start, is you've got to fix the fundamental matchmaking experience, and you've got to incentivize people playing in a way they want. And, you know, skins are kind of played out now. It's nice to get them, but like we need like, you know, those little stupid fucking ranks underneath your rank where it's like, I'm a commander, you know, and all this stuff. What does that actually really fucking do? I know I got to go above a certain amount to even be allowed to play ranked, but like, why can't I use those points to buy in-game skins? Like, for example, there's this other product on Dota 2, you know, called Dota Plus, and the Dota community, they liked it at first, and now they don't think it adds a lot of value. But you basically pay like the amount of a Twitch subscription, and every month it gives you a reason to play. You gain shards, it tracks the stats with certain characters. You unlock like legacy skins and cosmetics that aren't in the game anymore, plus some new ones if you get 75,000 shards. Little things like this give people an incentive to play. And Counter-Strike doesn't really have any of those at the moment. And I think if you go free to play and you take a look at a different kind of microtransaction, I think you get that. And I think the game can still have a bright future. And I don't even buy into the stupid, CS is dead. It's got the same number of fucking peak players as Dota 2. Or thereabouts, you know. So, whatever. Right, so that's the panorama talk out of the way. Now, the other thing that happened last week when we were doing the show was, of course, the collapse of EnVyUs, and everybody started taking to Twitlongers, as they do, to sort of dish the dirt about what had happened. And basically, without going, laboring the point, it's pretty much what we expected. It was
not actually that spicy, those Twitlongers, though.
Yeah, I know.
There wasn't revealed.
Like, pro players have got no right. They can never get it just right, can they, when it comes to like marketing, right? It's either like you're a fucking NA piece of shit. Give me 50 subs and I will leak something that I was told in private. And you're like, that's acceptable, I suppose. And then it's the other end where it's like, I'm gonna deliver something spicy, and it's just like, it's the most mundane Twitlonger I've ever read. It's like 500 words to basically say we thought Happy was a bit of a cunt. You know, it's like, well, all right, well, we could have hypothesized that and did many times on the show. So it's not really worth kind of laboring the point, but it did confirm that basically, according to Scream and according to Kiyashima in particular, they did kind of feel that, without trying to be funny, Happy was the problem in the team, and people had really lost confidence in his vision, and it had got to the point where they were being actually sort of resistant to Happy's ideas in game, which certainly showed. I mean, it wasn't, we criticize Happy a lot for not being a tactical mastermind, but it wouldn't matter if he was, if the players don't want to fucking listen for the strats he creates. So I'm sympathetic in that regard. If you're going to give someone the title of in-game leader and the role of in-game leader, you have to fucking let them lead. So I thought that was like a little bit interesting, but I don't know. Was there anything in any of this that prompted you to have some thoughts on the issue?
Not really. Like, I will say, I thought, to me, the most telling thing in any Twitlonger, this is generally a theme and a theory that I have in esports Twitlongers, is that whenever anyone writes one like that, they actually just tell you about themselves more than they tell you about anyone else. Because whenever they're writing about someone else, they can just be full of shit. They can just be misinterpreting. They could, it's their interpretation of what that guy was doing. So the only real interesting thing is more to see where they're at personally themselves. So like, I think if you read the three Twitlongers, right, start with Scream. So Scream actually did an interesting job of outlining, like, basically, as far as I can tell, that he seems like he was depressed, to be honest. And also, as much as he, clearly wasn't fitting into Happy's system and style, he I don't think disingenuously also does sort of admit, like, well, you know, it's not like I was forced to do it though. Like I was kind of willingly doing it, because actually, if you go back in time, even that was even one of my theories about Scream, which is that when he was playing not very well in this EnVyUs lineup, I also got the feeling that it's because he had just lost who he was as a player. And so in that scenario, you might even be like, okay, if you want me to do this fucking weird entry role, okay, I'll do it, okay. And in that scenario, you're just going to go from bad to worse. And then when it doesn't work like that, are you really going to come back when you're the worst player on the team? I mean, it wasn't really the worst player, but, you know, comparatively, and then tell the guy, give me all the star role, you know, where your confidence is shot. So I think he was just in a bad scenario. Probably not even entirely all Happy's fault. Sounds like some of that's on Scream as well and wherever he's at in his life. And it sounds like, to be honest, just for him, he just can't handle not being on the top French team. It's like, it wouldn't really have mattered almost how good EnVyUs was. Then you go to Kiyashima. Kiyashima's statement betrays a lot of the fact that this was just sort of like a makeshift team for him. I don't think he ever really believed it was going to go places. I think he just gave it a shot towards the end. It didn't work out. Also, if you look at his comments, for anyone who doesn't know, part of the reason why he was booted out of FaZe was he was already having some sort of motivation issues towards the end then. I know that was never publicly said, because everyone's a two-faced cunt and you never get to find the real story in half this shit. Because as you say, people either go way too spicy or no flavour whatsoever. So the last one is Happy, and I have to say Happy's was the weakest of all. It said almost nothing. All he basically did was not really take responsibility for anything, but just sort of, I mean, he vaguely implied it in as much as, you know, the in-game leader does sort of like, to some degree, take responsibility, but he didn't really apologize to anyone. I thought it was fairly weak. He just sort of like, I mean, here's the thing. He has nothing left to lose at this point in time. He's already had his career wrecked. And at this point in time, it's clear no one's really going to fire any nukes at him. So there's not really any point rabble-rousing and getting people annoyed. But I was amazed by the response to the Happy one, though. Because a lot of the response to Happy's was, because they saw what they thought was a momentary glimpse of a human, they were all like, oh, why were people bloody saying he was the problem?
They do it every time.
They did the old reverse circle jerk where it's like, come on, mate. Listen,
the counter jerk is deployed, yeah.
It's not even about him as a person. It's just, if you look what he did as an in-game leader as a player, he absolutely ran one of the best teams and orgs and sets of resources into the motherfucking ground over and over again, and justifiably should not have a career playing for a top team at the moment. Now, he could still go and play for an okay team, and maybe even, I even think as an individual player, if he just got his ego in check, he could actually be a pretty good player and could himself one day play for a top level team again. But yeah, I thought there wasn't anything really particularly spicy in there. In fact, funnily enough, that's one of those scenarios in EnVyUs where I didn't have inside contacts in that team. I wasn't getting fed information. I just think from the outside, it was pretty easy to speculate what was going on there.
Yeah, it's been pretty obvious for a while. It's like, I think what's interesting now is like, it's like, where does everyone go? Like, Scream made it abundantly clear, like, I don't think we're staying together. I am open to international offers. Scream's the type of player that, even though he played well at sort of the last event I saw him at, it's more about his brand, you know, huge Instagram following, you know, mouse and peripheral contracts and big following in general. You know, he's a guy who, like, any team will take a shot on Scream, whether you think it's deserved on merit or not. He'll always have that opportunity. I think Keo is certainly well respected still as a player. I think he'll have opportunities. I'm certainly worried now about what happens to RPK. RPK certainly seemed to think, you know, happy.
You have to worry if he's going to retire, right?
Yeah, I think without putting too fine a point on it, you know, here's what happened. He had this renaissance. He hit career best form in that team, in a failing team, was literally carrying that team. And RPK's always been at his best when he's had like a super, you know, micromanagement in-game leader behind him. You know, he had it with KRL. Regnum, I think, was an in-game leader of his at one point in Source. Might be wrong about that. Certainly Existence. So he's always had that kind of in-game leader in his career, and Happy seemed to be doing that for him, and it was working. You know, we got him to where he wanted, and then he has this bout of pneumonia, you know, real travesty, and then since he came back, honestly,
he never got back there again.
Yeah, he's pretty fucking ordinary. He certainly hasn't climbed the mountain again. So not only is he not a player that's in particular good form, he's an older player. He was also the guy who was like, sort of backing Happy up and saying, like, I'm tired of all the fighting in the team. You know, I'm going to kind of stay with what the in-game leader wants to do and be the good soldier, which is, you know, typical of what he brings to the team. It's why in-game leaders generally like him. I don't know where he goes now. And I don't know if anyone would want to take, you know, it's not really.
And obviously, he's not someone known for speaking English. So,
no, well,
as far as we know, French-speaking teams are his only choice. And unfortunately, one of the biggest dogs just left the entire French scene.
Yeah. So I think he might have some problems ahead, and I think it's a shame. But I think that's kind of the sign of the times. And then obviously you've got Happy, which I think he's going to go so far down the fucking trough now. I think it's going to be unreal. I don't even know if Happy will have the motivation to keep on playing. I mean, let's be real. Like, Happy's a fucking, you know, major winner. He's got fucking money in the bank. He's done really well. EnVyUs have always had like a really, really good salary, one of the highest. He's basically been stealing checks for 2 fucking years.
Yeah.
You know, if like esports retirements in general are fucking stupid and bullshit. You should never say never. But honestly, if Happy's age, this point in his career, money in the bank, does he want to go and fucking slum it? Like one of these teams, like one of these tier 2 teams, tier 3 teams, when you've got majors in your cabinet? I don't know if you do. And as I said, he has never struck me as a player who loves Counter-Strike. Never.
I mean, I saw that there was that news where like he was added to the roster of like Tempo Storm or some bullshit like that, just for like some online match, I think.
Yeah, and I think he's been removed since. I think he's actually come off. But yeah, I don't think he's gonna. It'll be interesting, I suppose. But Scream and Kirishima will find teams. RPK.
Here's the thing, though. I think that's actually bang out of order because the fact is, like, the reason I would suspect you're correct is because when Happy was at his peak, he didn't seem like someone who put all his energy into the game in terms of as an in-game leader. Because I'm sorry, if you're the in-game leader of like the world champions of Counter-Strike, I'd hope you're putting your life into the game. You can't just turn up. It's not a job for you. You don't turn up and go, I'm just like all the other players. I put in my practice. I'm off to do whatever I want. Like it's different if you're just a player in the squad. So if he didn't do that at his peak, I'm skeptical he's going to do it at a lower level. And then the reason why I say it's bang out of order though is because if people just knew some of the arguments me and Mayor have had over the years about in-game leaders and obviously existence and all this sort of stuff. Listen, say what you like about existence. When he went down to play for LDLC, he played as though that was a real team. And he practiced as though that was a real team. Yeah. And he did everything he could to make that a good team and to raise the level of those players. Some would say above and beyond the level that actually they maybe even deserve to be at as a team. Now, if you're a great in-game leader, Happy, and you certainly thought you were, what a pussy move. Go down a level. Take players who aren't set against you already. Take people who, you know what, would fucking jump at the chance to play with you. They would love to play with you in LDLC right now. A team like that where they didn't like Existence's style. Maybe they want a looser style. This is your chance. And by the way, at that level, you're a really good player individually. This is the perfect chance for you to go and prove you're a really good player and a good in-game leader. Either get yourself a gig just as a player one day playing for a Mouse Sports or a FaZe or something, or work your way back up as an in-game leader. And when the next French shuffle comes, and we all know they inevitably fucking come, it's not like you're going to have to wait 4 years for one. You don't even have that thing. You might have your shot to come back again, especially if in the meantime you figured out wherever your personal issues were and you've gotten your game back in check. So I agree. Certainly probably would be a tip to retire or just gradually like and unceremoniously fade out of the scene. But I think it's bullshit, you know. When you think of where people were at in 2014 and 2015, just grinding and killing themselves for $1,000, the chance at maybe winning 10K in like a 2-month span. Come on, man. This is easy street now, and we're talking about when you get to tier 2 and tier 3. We were talking before about all those DreamHack Opens. Go and win a few of those. Actually get yourself in a position where, again, by the way, Happy speaks absolutely fine English. He could go anywhere in the world if he doesn't act like a dickhead, basically. So if he chooses to put himself out of the game, he did that to himself. Just because you've soured the French scene, people outside of the French scene aren't as set against you. So I just feel like if he's really what he claimed he was, he'll actually do something about it. He'll actually see this as a chance to rebound and come back up again.
We'll see. Hopefully, not as an in-game leader, though. I'd just like to see him fucking play.
He could be a very good individual player. That's the stupidest part, isn't it?
I know. It's crazy. Another bit of news that happened. Godsent ceased operations. You might be less interested in this than I am, Duncan. But as someone that has had the deep, deep joy of having the head of Refresh try and imply I should be disciplined when I was working at E-League by sending them a nasty email because I did a video saying, hey, look.
It's weird, Rich. Why would Godsent close down since Refresh never owned any of it?
Well, this is what I mean.
I usually like to take my businesses and just close them for no reason.
Yeah, it seems really odd, right? Because obviously the only reason to close Godsent would be that if there was some sort of conflict of interest and it was going to sort of overlap with these new ownership rules that are now being endorsed by Valve and all the big leagues. But obviously they don't. They've said it publicly many times that they definitely don't have ownership, even though I published the contracts from Godsent that you agree to if you want to be part of the Refresh system, which is ownership in everything but name.
Also convenient that they just started a player-owned org right around the time that all the other ones that Refresh owns started player-owned orgs. Weird that again.
Yeah, with very similarly designed logos. Just weird, isn't it? Now, so this is the point I wanted to make. I mean, you've already touched upon it immediately. So first of all, like, if this was all about like player power and giving the brands to players and stuff, why haven't Refresh just handed it over to Pronax, all of the rights and everything else, and said, listen, Marcus, there's not really a chance that you're likely to ever come back as a player. So here's a brand, like at least you got something out of the deal. I'm told that because they ceased operations and didn't sell, Marcus didn't get anything.
Sound.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been told, so I will say, not confirmed. Haven't had time to talk to Marcus. I'm sure Nicola Nyholm will get the proverbial gun to his head out and fucking make him come out and say, these recent comments by Richard Lewis are all lies again. Discipline him, E-League. Fire him. Fire your host because he said some things that are true about us. Nicola Nyholm's a fucking bitch, by the way.
He sent a letter to E-League saying you should be fired.
Sent an email, yeah. And
who the fuck is this? Who does he think he's writing to? Jimmy Savile. Jim, could you fix it for Richard to be fired? P.S. Right. I don't know why people keep saying there's a lot of fucked up politics in esports. P.S. Fire everyone else as well.
Right. So here's what he said in the email that he sent to my direct boss, by the way. Yeah, he basically said, have you seen these YouTube videos he's making where he's talking about our conflict of interest and our joint ownership and the things that he's written about us? Just so you know, if anybody at Refresh criticized E-League, they would be disciplined. Why will you not reciprocate? Why would you discipline your staff for criticizing E-League? Why would you do that? So it was even like he offered this weird sort of Faustian deal, like if they ever say E-League is bad, we will discipline our staff. It's like, well, that's bad as well, isn't it? You mad cunt. That's not good. You have to understand, it was a regular occurrence when I was at E-League. Like every week, I would just sort of shout over to either Ben, who you met, or Christina, or occasionally the vice president. Be like, any emails? Any emails about me this week? And like, yeah, we've had another 5 people in the industry requested that you're fired. It was just standard procedure that people just did not want me to work for E-League. It was another one of the many reasons why it was like I decided to just walk away from the job, because when you've got people who work in the esports industry basically just being like this. And I called him out about it. I publicly tweeted about, you tried to have me fired. And he was like, no, I never did that. I only heavily implied that you should be disciplined or punished in some way. It's like, well, that's reasonable. That's reasonable.
Why it would be any of his fucking business what internal E-League people do to you? Like, how do you justify that?
So, I've heard, like Marcus has played the good soldier and always said it was all his project and all that. But the reality is, it even says in the statement, and this is where the conflict of interest problem is. He said, where was it? Thanks to Refresh for giving us the resources to run the organization. Well, what does that mean?
It's a charity organization, right? I didn't realize. So what you do is you just give people money. They don't give you any sort of equity stake. And then what you do is you just close the org down and you make none of the money back. Oh, right. It was a charity thing. Oh, okay. So it seems implausible, really. But.
Yeah, really strange. But obviously they sold the team to red reserve, so the team is still going to be playing, still active. Wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if Refresh were eyeing up red reserve and trying to do some mad secret Machiavellian move there, because obviously Godsent was too obvious. But who knows? Because it's not like I think red reserve is I don't even think of them as an organization. They kind of remind me of Lemon Dogs in that sense, right? It's just a name to throw on Swedish and Scandic mixes. But yeah, you can see here the exact quote was, over this past years, we have had legendary CSGO players join our ranks. We want to sincerely thank every single player that has played under Godsent's banner. We want to thank everyone that has been part of the organization, and we also want to thank Refresh for providing the resources to keep the organization running. So, I mean, if you're basically pumping the money into the org and you're getting things out of the org, again, far be it from me to suggest whose fucking name is on the paper is irrelevant. It's this paper that's fucking relevant. But what do I know, right? Like, I'm an idiot, obviously. But anyway, so there was that point. But then, second of all, why does Marcus not just keep this going? Why does it have to end here? Like, so what you mean is this organization that was definitely player run, you never got a sponsor. You never had any other form of income. Nobody was ever
interested. If these orgs were really player run as well, then Heroic and Godsent would be smashed with free agents. They'd be mouse spots. They'd be what FaZe Clan is now. That's what had happened. Guardian would go, right, well, I've had my time in Na'Vi, been getting fucked by them for long enough. You know what? Time for the big bucks. Time to own a stake in a company. Here we go. No. Obviously, he goes to FaZe, a team that is the exact opposite of a player-run company, where they just say, we've got all the money in the world, here's some wage slavery, get the fuck out my face, and FaZe up, motherfucker. Like, all the, same in Denmark. Where do people go? Do they rush to Heroic, Rich? No, they go to North, because North has loads of money, and guess what? There are no player-owned dogs, and nobody gives a fuck. And as soon as anyone goes, wait a minute, no, this player owns 1%. Yeah, I'm talking about actually in the context of that. Like, a sandwich that has 1% ham and 99% shit is not a ham sandwich. I've used that analogy before. It's a pretty good one, though.
No, it is a pretty good analogy. It just makes me wonder where you get your sandwiches from. Like, Greg's, by the sound.
I get them from Games Paradise. Shout out Rex.
Yeah, not bad, right? But yeah, anyway, it's absurd. Like, it sort of ends with this weird thing. Like, we hope that one day our Illuminati-looking logo will once again take everyone by surprise. But until then, all we can say is farewell, friends, much love. And what this means to me, reading between the lines and a few people I've spoke to and stuff, is that basically they didn't want to give the brand and the logo, the things that Refresh paid for. They didn't want to give it to Marcus as like a going away present and being, okay, look, you were the good soldier, you put your name on the paper, you fucking always said you were the sole owner, and even though we were pumping the money into it, and they didn't say, like, for that, here's the brand. Because they have failed to sell Godsent. Let's also be clear.
With good reason.
They tried to find buyers for it, and all they could do was sell the team. They couldn't sell the brand itself. They couldn't sell it as a holistic package to anybody. So what this says to me is we're keeping hold of that brand. It was kind of like when the CGS liquidated. Right, they bought Complexity, right? Which, of course, we all know is a fucking individual brand. But so they could have Complexity in the CGS, they paid Jason Lake to have the rights to that brand and its logo and its history and everything else that was agreed in the contract, created in part by Jason Katz. And when it liquidated, they didn't just give those brands back, because those brands were now assets. So you have to go to auction or legally challenge to get it back. You have to prove that or buy it, right? So I think that's what's happening here. I think what Marcus means is, they're going to have another go at selling the brand, probably like as part of a fucking Refresh fire sale, when everyone realizes that you can't just have all these layers of conflict of interest in esports, which maybe never. Who knows? But I did think it was funny. And again, yes, you touched upon the important point. Yeah, Refresh, there's no conflict of interest here. We are closing down Godsent because of the rules, because everyone knows the unspoken truth. So there was that.
By the way, though, here's another thing about that as well, is, again, even the premise of, like, players are going to own some stake and we've got loads of resources. So you know what? Whatever you guys need, salary, training facilities, obviously ability to travel around the world, we can give you it all. Right? That sounds brilliant. So how did it fail so badly? Because Godsent in particular has to be one of the worst orgs to ever get that much resources put through the doors. It even had the players that you would need to succeed. Think about how much young talent it had. Think about how many old pros it had. It's almost baffling how little success they actually had as a team.
Yeah. Well, just as everything. Like, they built nothing. I'll tell you another story that I know behind the scenes, right? You know when they did that mad fucking negotiation in the power play and they got fucking Crims and, Flusher and all this stuff, right? It was like Refresh, basically got these like high-powered fucking sports lawyers. I got sent a bunch of stuff related to that, like conversations and whatnot. And again, it was one of those stories where it's like, yeah, there's enough here. If I was a gossip tabloid, not enough for a sort of credible journalistic report, but, statute of limitations has gone on it, so who gives a fuck? And plus, it'll really upset Nicola Nyholm, so good. But they paid for, like, super fucking, like, high-powered lawyers to negotiate them out of their, like, Fnatic contracts or whatever it was. And he was, like, bragging and boasting about offering that to the team. So it cost them, like, that project, it must have lost them a bunch. It's just as well they also own, like, fucking Astralis. And they're getting all these like sick fucking partnerships with like Audi and all this other stuff and all these sponsorship deals with fucking Jack Jones or whoever the fuck they've got on it.
By the way, that in itself is hilarious because for anyone thinking this is the first time it's happened in esports, it's not. In fact, there was a guy who very openly did it. It's one of the all-time greats, Alex Scarfield. He owned Evil Geniuses. And at the time, yes, this is 6 years ago. It's obviously not now, so it's a much smaller market. But this guy was setting such new benchmarks for how good the sponsorship deals he was getting was that, like, companies would even come to him and basically tell him, like, we've got to sponsor you. And he'd go like, listen, I've actually got my whole sponsor deck full, but there's other orgs you can sponsor. And they'd even be going like, no, we just do anything to be part of your. And he literally set up a second org alliance just to have a spread of this massive amount of sponsorship dollars. So what I'm pointing out here is the fact that only Astralis had all these baller-ass amazing sponsors. Heroic maybe had a few, but none of the massive name ones. And Godsent had fuck all. Tells you that even the one area that Refresh could, in theory, stake their claim in is, we know business. Do you, though? Isn't this another scenario, what we mentioned a few weeks ago, which is that, yes, there is a level to which it's impressive to be able to raise a lot of investment money. But to actually make some money with that money is the real impressive accomplishment. If you give me 10 million and I piss it against the wall, listen, I get props for convincing you to give me the 10 million, but I haven't shown any business skills. I've just wasted $10 million. If I take the 10 million and turn it into 100, now I can start swinging my dick around that I know business,
Yeah, and honestly, like I say, it's like for me, I thought it was one of the stronger brands that they had. I thought the logos are pretty good.
I thought there was actually pretty baller. Yeah, even the name's pretty sick because you put your tag as God, whatever. That's what's mad. And then you think about, like I say, here's the thing: Heroic was actually, if you talk about overall events, because basically there was that one tournament that Godsent had where they did very well, the DreamHack Masters Malmo. But if you're talking about for the lifespan of the team, Heroic was a much better team in Counter-Strike. Look at the names Heroic had in them. They barely had any top talent. Then you go and look at Godsent. Fucking hell, how many good young players and old vets who are still playing did they have? All of them, pretty much.
Yeah, it's true, man. So look, while we're talking about sort of Godsent going, one of the worst kept secrets in esports. It's all out now. They've done the big launch. Fuck me, there's some funny stuff here, though. So obviously, what we told you like 26 episodes ago exclusively on this show was all true, of course, because we know our shit. And yes, Immortals have confirmed that the team that was formerly known as SK Gaming will indeed be MIBR, and they had a big launch party for it and it was streamed. And obviously this is like, Noah Winston's brainchild, smart guy. I suppose if you are going to announce a brand, why not make a big fucking deal out of it and do it like this? Certainly at great expense. Shows you're fucking serious. And it's sort of, it was probably necessary, honestly, because if you were just like, hey, this team that's been failing at all these events, and we've got Stewie in there, and we don't know what the fuck is going on. If you just announced the team, it wouldn't be enough. But having like other players come out and having people talk to a crowd and having a stage and all of that stuff, it did make it kind of cool. And they announced some fucking sponsors and some other stuff. So it's all out there. The Tinder partnership, mate. Oh God!
Did you see my tweet?
I did. Yeah, you did nail it, mate.
I just put the two storylines together and solved.
You beat me to it. So in case you didn't see, the tweet was one of the things that Fallen has famously said is we're going to get a coach in to help us out, because obviously we do need some direction and some structure. And Dead, who's a fucking great guy, he's not a coach. He's like fuck, I've forgotten the French guy's name. That's really bad me.
Oh, he's a bit like Niak, yes.
Yeah, Niak. Sorry, Niak. I've known you for years. That's terrible. Going senile. But yeah. So he's more like that. He's a moral support guy. He's an organizational guy. And you know he knows Counter-Strike, but you're not telling Fallen what to do in a game, are you? Sure. You know what I mean? So, yeah, they said they're going to bring potentially a coach in. Well, when I fucking heard Tinder and that, mate, the picture immediately just came back of a coach, perhaps a Brazilian coach, with a Tinder profile. A Tinder profile pic that's not particularly appropriate. I still can't believe it. Like, not saying it's a real pic because he has denied it, but I'm pretty sure it is. But whatever.
Also, by the way, and people have never picked up on this, it's also hilarious sort of like shadowing, because obviously in that guy's career, he has motherfucking got around, hasn't he? And you just regret it instantly afterwards. You go, bloody hell, I've got to go home to work now. Like,
yeah.
Whoever that might be, indeed. Again, that mysterious person you're talking about. Yeah.
I just don't understand it, though.
Literally helicoptering like a motherfucker with his timer on.
It was like a Brazilian meat spin, mate. What the fuck is going on there? Goodbye, horses. I can't deal with it, mate. Like,
wait a minute, is my face in the shot? Make sure my face is at the shot. This is never going to get out there, right?
Why though? That's what makes no sense.
Mate, that's what we need to do, right? We need to have that scene from. Well, you already used it, but it needs to be recommissioned at this point anyway. That one where it was like, "Would you let me coach you? I'd let me coach you." Now, first of all, suck my.
Why? It just makes no sense. Like, because like Tinder, there's different levels of Tinder, and some people do treat it more like, what you would associate with Grindr, where it's just an absolute fuck fest. Like, it's just literally like, I am sucking cocks here, come here, and Tinder's like a bit more subtle than that. But I've just never even heard of anyone ever just being like, I will make
too bold, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like fucking, it's like that joke, innit? Like fucking, what's got two thumbs, speaks French and likes blowjobs. Moi, you know what I mean? It's like, you don't open up with that. That's fucking outrageous. So it did make me laugh. Obviously, nothing to do with MIBR, but just funny in general. But what do you think of that as a partnership in general? Like Tinder actually associating with an esports team?
I do certainly find it interesting that everyone, before we'd even seen what the deals would be like and how it'd be rolled out, poo-pooed the idea that we're allowed to have like YouPorn, for example, and like, why would we ever allow that? Even though it's a fucking adult game that you have to be like 17 to play, and we're in a world where, as far as I know, it's not Victorian Britain. Like, there's not any real reason why those sponsors couldn't be involved. It's not like they'd actually be showing porn ads as part of the sponsorship review. It'd just be a name on a thing, and anyone who wants they'd get the exposure. You wouldn't even need to have a logo for one of those ones. You'd see it, you'd go search on the internet, you'd find whatever you'd want. No problem as far as I can tell. But what's mad is, if that's going to be completely shunned, Tinder's not that far off, mate. People aren't meeting up to go out for coffee. I don't know if any of you are aware of this. That's actually sort of a fucking euphemism. You're meeting, it's basically you're seeing who you want to go and fuck. That's it. So, I mean, to be fair, I guess at this point in time, that is
going to be good.
I guess to be fair, I guess in fair, this is actually appropriate for MIBR, because the question is, who's Fallen going to fuck next? He's fucked Luminosity, SK Gaming, maybe Noah Winston. Here's the thing, Noah. I'd maybe swipe. Which one is it? Left on that one? Is left the no? Yes, I believe it is.
Yeah, well done. Excellent. If not, we'll edit it in post. But yeah, so I think it's good. Look, I like the idea of like, bigger sort of mainstream brands. Like Tinder's fucking huge. It's like the go-to dating app.
Oh, by the way, if you're going to do the Brazilian team, this is what Noah basically implied in my interview, is you're going to brand it differently. Like, here's the thing. Since obviously that team's a bit fiery, I'd even be trying to brand it that way. Like, I'd be trying to get like a fucking sick gin sponsor or something. Well, maybe for Henny's team, but I'd be going that route, I'd be going down there. Maybe get something like, I don't know, Hallmark to sponsor KNG's team. No need to apologise. We've got it ready for you here. They're not bad.
Mate, I've said this. You've missed your calling, dude. This is what you should be doing instead of all the other shit. Fuck esports historian. Just become a marketing guru. There's way more money in that. Way more money.
Yeah, there's a lot of untapped money in esports for sure. Especially because so many idiots come from that world. I mean, it's just because they're Americans and they've watched the NFL, to be fair, of like everything that's vaguely like a sport must be clean, packaged, Disney-fied for the family. It's like, there's never going to be a family watching Counter-Strike Global Offensive, you daft cunt. Or if there is, it's going to be my utterly dysfunctional family where I'll just be like, my son will obviously be a fucking mad happy fan as well, and probably be Fallen's biggest fan as well. And I have to disown him. He'll be homeless. Probably go and play FPL though, won't he? With no fucking mic or anything. Then Mickey will be like, Mikey, whatever, I don't fucking care. He'll just be going like, oh, bloody give him a chance.
We love this Shields player. He's top banana. But no, I think it's like a big move. I'm pretty excited by like getting more mainstream sponsors into it and bigger sponsors into it. It's always good. It's good optics is the fucking word that cunts use. It's good optics. Here's a theory though, like that's been sort of peddled.
Good optics in this game.
Yeah, we certainly could. Here's a theory that was peddled around, and I don't know how I feel about this because it doesn't really stand up to scrutiny when you think about an event being in Brazil and it being true. But I did see because now obviously we've got the MIBR flare on Reddit, right? And I saw your tweet about that, which is what we talked about in the last podcast, where it was like all the previous fans just Kogu. So immediately, I hope if you could ban comments by Flare, that'd be sick. That would make Reddit tolerable, I think. But anyway, a theory that's been peddled is that we never really because the relationship had soured between the team and SK Gaming. Actually, they were sort of deliberately not playing, and this was evidenced by the fact that. All right, strap yourself in.
People are so gullible; it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, they weren't wearing the shirts, so why? And Fallen played like 500 dimensional Jenga with that tweet about I need a lawyer. He just did it to fuck over the sponsor, and actually the team has been deliberately trying to do all it can to disparage SK Gaming, its sponsors and its partners before it moved to MIBR, and now they're really going to start playing. And they were just on easy mode. They weren't practicing. They weren't doing anything. And now, and only now, will we see the real team. Do you give any credence to that theory? I can understand them being demotivated.
Oh, absolutely. But the whole point is that's genuine. Now, first of all, from things I know behind the scenes, talking to some of the players, they absolutely were motivated. They've been looking for answers all along. That's why they've switched up and done so many bizarre things. They haven't done it to fuck around and sabotage the game. They've done it because they're genuinely looking for an answer for the in-game leader. They're trying to make Stewie 2K work in their team. They thought of the players that are left. As an interview came out recently with Fur. He's the one who said, let's get Stewie 2K. He's someone we could bring in. So to me, it doesn't work on the base level. Then you've got to add in, this is another classic example of where idiots on Reddit don't even sort of like think through their own comment, like their own premise. Like they don't even steel man their own argument.
So I'll get to the next topic on the list. And there's a couple of sort of newer stories. So one of the things we were talking about was like narrative and how narrative is certainly the preserve of the average fan, especially the ones that go to Reddit. And we were saying like last episode, we were talking about how nothing. It was like, yeah, okay, he did all right, all things considered, but the idea that he can hang with like a top team anymore, I don't think that was proven at that event. Well, anyway, there was some news that broke that basically was saying that Sticko is going to be out of Mouse Sports now, and that they're actually willing to use nothing as a stand-in again, now in place of Sticko, with Oscar coming back to the team. Now, I suspect, based on what I know, I think like Sticko's been on the chopping block for a while. He's obviously statistically the weakest player in the team.
I believe it was even admitted in interviews. I think he even said it in one I did with him that he would have been out already. I think it was like last year sometime.
Yeah. So I think fair enough. But again, I never thought Sticko was an issue. Now, again, I'll tell you this: I saw some outrageous, outlandish, deranged comments on the DK report, including, "Oh, they should never have got rid of Dennis." Like, I mean, just being me the fuck up. Like, the idea that Sticko isn't a better player than Dennis is just mind blowing. That people are still doubling down on that particular narrative. Dennis is so improved. He was fucking terrible at the time. Sticko was an upgrade. It's not even up for fucking debate.
Did you see the subsequent news, though, where that might not now be the case? And,
So I was going to segue in. So I just wanted to get your thoughts about Sticko sort of being out of the team, because obviously what you've got to consider is teams are a balance and a blend. It's not just about throwing 5 fucking people together who all have like great names and great skills. If that was the case, anybody with money could build a winning team. And we've seen with FaZe, they've comparatively underachieved. And have had tournament wins when they're using stand-ins. So it's not a fucking exact science. I always thought Sticko was... I can see where his weaknesses lie, but I can also see how, for me, Mouse Sports were working. I know they'd plateaued a little bit, but what you got to remember is, sure, you might want to improve and you might want to keep improving, but just because you want that to happen, there might not be a path for you to actually do it. And it might not even be about anything that you control. Like, how are Mouse Sports ever going to overtake Astralis? How's that ever going to happen? Like, right now, how is that ever going to happen? It wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter who you bring in. Like, maybe you're just positioned to be the 4th best team, the 3rd best team. Maybe you never have a period where you are the best team in the world. Maybe that never happens. That's not underachievement. Think about motherfuckers that played during like the Roger Federer era and shit like this. It's like
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, you all play basketball when Jordan was around.
Mate, just look right now. Okay, so here's a great analogy for you. Is Andy Murray, the obviously great Scottish tennis player who is literally a knight of the realm now, by the way, because obviously if you've won that many titles in a dog shit country like ours, you're going to get made a fucking knight even before you retire. So what people don't realize when they critique him as a player is, no joke, he is one of the best players of all time. Like, he's probably like a top 30, absolutely top 30, maybe top 20 player to ever play tennis. Now, his titles wouldn't tell you that. Because if you're only going by Grand Slam titles, 3 Grand Slam titles doesn't get you that high up the list, actually. Off the top of my head, it maybe gets you to like 19 or 20 on the list of titles all time. Now, what that doesn't tell you, though, is the context, which is some of the people with more Grand Slam titles than Andy Murray played in eras that were easier or wide open eras where there wasn't a dominant player. Andy Murray has played, except... in the finals he's lost something like 8 or 9 finals, right? In every one of those finals, he played Roger Federer or Novak Djokovic, who at the time were like the number 1 player and will go down as top 5 players to ever play tennis in history, even if you wait 50 years from now. So like, that's not really a scenario where you failed. You actually, to some degree, in the context of what you did, overachieved. By the way, he won 2 of those Grand Slams against Novak Djokovic. So in that context, I actually think once you ignore the recent drop-off they had, where I do think they had a few games that were a bit dodgy and they've been found out to some degree on Mirage, they have over-fucking-achieved. With the money they've spent on the team, massively overachieved. With the places they've had to go to get the talent, the diverse mix of players, massively overachieved. With where all these players were at in their careers, even a year ago, massively overachieved. I don't know what there is not to like about that team. I even think as a team, they have a pretty cool style of play. They seem to play well together. I wouldn't be in a rush like these fans and some of the Mouse players are to fuck that chemistry up, because you have no idea where that squad's going when you mess with the lineup. So I agree with you. Where they're at right now is a snug as fuck spot when you consider relative to where they can be, and especially without a clear move that makes you the number 1 team. Like, here's the thing. Obviously it wouldn't be for Sticko in this scenario anyway, but you know what? If this was like a really tough choice, like, you know what? Yeah, Rops is probably the future. But if you tell me tomorrow we can have Simple instead of Rops, now we can start having a discussion, I'd agree. There's a way you can go. That's one where it's like, but is that the move that could make us number one? Sure. At the moment, no move for Steeko makes you number one. I'm just going to go ahead and say it right there. There isn't one in the scene that does it. Even with one of the moves I would have liked, like maybe NBK, that only maybe marginally upgrades it, and gives you a bit more, shores you up a bit. Steeko was a perfectly serviceable player. He definitely made a lot of mistakes. I certainly think he's one of those players where, unfortunately, the bad thing about his team is a lot of the players in his team are very quiet players. Like, they're not really the sort of people who have like the mentality where they can big up their teammates as much. So I think he's got into a spiral where he reads social media and he listens to the lack of his teammates telling him he's brilliant. So I don't think that helps. But his mentality is brilliant. He really has fully embraced that mindset of like, I am the support player. I am here to help Oscar get to a position. Yeah. I am here to allow Sonny to go to this part of the map. It's not about kills with that sort of player. So if I have to tell you this, if I look at Mouse Sports, the main reason they don't win starts immediately with factors like their best player isn't as good as the best player of the teams that beat them. Their in-game leader isn't as good as the in-game leaders of the team. It'd be like 2 or 3 reasons before I got to Steeko. Now, Steeko would obviously be on that list, but he wouldn't be at the top. So, again, to me, unfortunately, I feel like it's just the convenient move for everyone. First of all, it'll be a popular move with plebs. The players themselves don't have to cut any of the other players they consider really good and integral to their success. So I could definitely see it happening, but I don't really see what the point of it is.
Yeah, and look, so to segue into the next part, so it was then announced that actually Steeko is going to play at ESL 1 Cologne.
Sure, his confidence is going to be through the fucking roof for that one.
Yeah, I mean, but this happened before as well, right? Like, there was floated that he was going to get dropped, and I think when it comes to that, you've got to just bite the fucking bullet and just get player, do right by the player and be like, listen, it's better to use a stand-in, have the event off. Or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, what happened was, and we'll get another window into the mind of Virtus Pro and how they fucking handle everything terribly on a PR level. I guess because they don't give a fuck. Like when you're fucking, got fucking mad levels of money and nobody's like your core audience is never gonna have anything bad said about you. I guess you can just fucking act like bell ends, can't you? But so what happened was Snax from Virtus Pro left their ESEA roster. And then immediately people were like, oh, hello. And then Snax put out a Facebook post saying, misclick. Right? That's all it said.
His sense of humor never hit with me ever, mate. His sense of humor with me is like the fucking keto diet with him. Just don't get it, and I'm not going to be trying it. I don't give a fuck, mate. Keep that in.
All right. Well, I think he's definitely funny in person. I like talking to Snax. He's a funny motherfucker in my opinion, but whatever. But anyway, so misclick. I don't even think he was saying that to be funny. I think he got told to say it, or somebody said it, or something like that. So then that happens, and then obviously a report comes out again from DK, basically saying that Mouse Sports are targeting Snax, and Snax is now the replacement for Steeko, but long term, Steeko will be out of the team, and Snax will come in. Virtus Pro react to it by saying we have no official statement about Snax, but there will be an update in 48 hours, which is better than calling the journalist a liar, you fucking scummy cunt. So congrats. Yeah. You've upgraded, you've leveled up there. But I think it was also confirmed that basically they then actually decided to work with the journalist this time and gave DK a statement that does indeed confirm the transfer to Mouse Sports is one of the options that they're working on. So again, massive improvement. Well done. See how
it's also crazy that they've acknowledged the concept that a deal can exist without having finished.
I know, mad, isn't it? Mad. Like it's almost as if you could have just done this when the Taz shit went down, right? Like, imagine that, right? But whatever. We won't gripe about that because we touch upon that subject all the time. But I thought this was interesting. So first of all, I think, without wanting to put too fine a point on it, I think the Mouse Sports deal would certainly be plausible. If for those that don't know how the business is structured, obviously ES Force Holdings was originally, I think, Virtus Pro Holdings, and they renamed when they wanted to expand, but they own Virtus Pro in its entirety and lots of other stuff in that region, but they also have a controlling share of SK Gaming. It was 66% at one point. I don't know how many more shares they've got got there, and that was obviously with Alex Muller, who was the guy that famously sort of was one of the founders of SK Gaming, along with Ralph Reichardt's brother, I think, for Schroet Commando. I'm not too sure, okay. But anyway, he is the guy. He's the go-to guy for SK Gaming. Been there the longest and everything. Well, he actually has a company called 3 Sports Media with the mouse sports guy, Cengiz Atulyu, and
who they share an office with.
Yeah, and they share an office with. So I imagine if there is a target there, the mouse sports deal would certainly be preferable, because you'd want to do a favor for a business partner, wouldn't you? So I think this deal is highly likely based on what's out there and what's been reported. The question now is, Duncan, what do you think of this move overall? I've got to say, I think Snax is such a versatile player. I think you could plop him straight in the team as a like-for-like replacement for Sticko and get an upgrade, but without obviously the support work. But I actually think this is a move I could envision working. I think this is like how you get a little bit of an upgrade.
To me, this is like a 50-50, because on the one hand, I'd definitely like to see the move. I certainly think it's within Snax's skill set to be able to be a good addition to mouse sports and to rejuvenate his career and obviously have a lot more actual team success than he's had in the last year or so. But on the other hand, when you saw the sheer vitriol that he had in that statement he made against Neo when he quit being the in-game leader, I don't necessarily know if he's someone who has the ego to be like, right, well, you are this. Because remember, the problem with mouse sports as a team is they do not have any spot left for anyone who wants to be something vaguely approaching a star. And rightfully so. None of those 3 should ever be cut at the moment, like, especially for the money you're paying for them. They are absolutely a dream trio at the moment. And they even complement each other pretty well, I think, in terms of Oscar, Sonny, and Rops. So the big issue there is if he comes in the team, he has to be at least skewing towards the support event to make it work, in my opinion, unless they're just going to be some mad, like, FaZe Clan-esque team, which I don't really buy that's going to work. So then you've got to add in, he doesn't really have fantastic. He has okay English, but doesn't have fantastic English. Everyone else in the team incredibly fluent in English. I don't really know how good his comms are as a player. I always got the sense in the team he was one of the players who didn't necessarily do tons of the comms. He was the in-game leader, admittedly, so I won't necessarily make a concrete statement there. So I could see it going. Here's the thing. He has the ability to make this a great move. He also perhaps has the personality to make it a move that won't work.
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting one for me. I lean more to the side that I could see this working, because I think about old Snax and how he used to play and how he would do a lot of really smart defensive work solo on bomb sites on that CT side. And that's a similar thing that they have Sticko doing on some key maps. Obviously, to hand, I don't have like for like positions and replacements. But I think stylistically, I think it's a move that can definitely work, and it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. And as much as I love Jordan, if they get Snax, if they do land Snax over nothing, that is certainly a fucking much better move overall, and could be something that long-term actually does get mouse sports back up there. Still could never see them overtaking an Astralis or a FaZe to a certain degree, even though they have a great matchup there, but just in terms of overall consistency. But yeah, I think it's a good move for the team overall. Right, so there we have it. Interesting stuff. I'll just check if there are any questions. No, there's not. No cues. Excellent. So I guess that means we can wrap up the podcast there. You have any stuff to add at the end? We're going to do another show this week, aren't we? We're going to do an ESL.
Yeah, we'll try and do one this weekend, I think.
Yeah. Basically, the reason for that is we're going to do that because we obviously still have got to hit an extra one, because Duncan was at an event and then I was doing something. So we are like one show behind this month so far. We're not on schedule for it. But we'll do an ESL 1 Cologne special. We'll try and get that out to you. Certainly, it'll be like on the first day or second day of the month, if not by the end of the month. We'll figure something out. But you're going to ESL 1 Cologne. You got anything on in the interim? Any interesting content projects coming out?
I should have quite a lot of stuff this week, but it's mainly just because I was so sick last week that I just haven't had a chance to do anything. So should be some good stuff coming out, I think.
Yeah, any teasers?
Let me think. I've got an interview with Nifty coming up.
Oh, that'll be good. Linked with Cloud9, of course, recently.
So
All right. Well, yeah, stay tuned for that. So there you have it. Now, obviously, the Realist podcast and esports can't happen without the people, the patrons, the lovely patrons that I said. You still don't get editorial input. You don't. None of these people get editorial input, even the big bidders, but we love them all the same. Our $100 patrons, Detlef Insomniac, Chris N. Wynn, Eric Boutros, TTMX MP, Hyolu, Mateus Pietkowski, Ruxun, and Jerky's Minion. And our $50 patrons, the Archangel Varao, Sard Sawar, Daniel Plamanov Yordanov, Pete Bidstrup, TC Owens, Vexy, Nasradamus, Marcus Kyunpa, Madsen, Ollie Ginther Zillan, Colin Penny, Mama Gemma Hennessy, Benakagi Assassin, and William Southern. That was by the numbers. Until the next episode, we'll keep you posted about the Cologne special. But until then, take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.